Hello, this is Silas here, and I'm back with my friend Steven. Say hello to the peoples.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well today. I hope you're all excited for Easter.
Yeah, this is we're recording this by Easter. This is probably going to be posted. I could actually even post this before the last series that we just recorded. Regardless, what we're talking about, I'm talking about things without introing what the hell this is. This is dishing on dish, where we talk about different food, and we're going to be talking about one if by land, two if by sea. And Steven, tell us a bit about this restaurant.
Sure. So this is an old school New York restaurant. It opened in 1973. A lot of interesting history behind the place. For those who are American and listening, you probably know this is a reference to the famous Paul Revere poem about the Midnight Ride. For those who don't know, Paul Revere was a Boston silversmith who made this famous ride at midnight to basically warn the Americans that the British soldiers were advancing on Lexington and Concord. Now, some of this has been mythologized a little bit. The menu actually has a the menu actually has the first part of a poem by a Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The poem was written in 1860. It says, "Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere on the 18th of April in 75. Hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. He said to his friend, if the British march by land or sea from town to night, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the North Church Tower as a signal light, one if by land and two if by sea, and I on the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be up and to arm." So that was the initial part. I mean, there's a much longer poem. I mean, you can find it online. It's public domain now. It's very well written. I mean, it was written much longer after the event, because you figure this was 1770. It happened in 1775. This was written in 1860. But the poem has sort of become immortalized. And I'm going to send you a link here. You probably know some of this stuff already, but there's some good stuff from biography.com, basically explaining how sort of the legend of the ride versus what actually happened in real life, like stories about how somebody, like they said, like Revere didn't actually see the signal. Like it wasn't for him. It was more, he was in Boston when it was let out, and he rode to Lexington but got captured. And a lot of this has been very dramatized for movies and stories and everything. It's become, I guess, one of those like American legends or something, if we want to call it that. But yeah, it's very interesting. So that's where the name comes from. There's a portrait of Paul Revere in the place. Christine and I took a photo of it by it, actually. And a little more of the history. It was actually originally a coach house owned by Aaron Burr, who was Thomas Jefferson's vice president and arch rivaled Alexander Hamilton. There's some pictures I took of a plaque by the bathroom actually explaining how Burr was the only person that Hamilton hated more than Jefferson. And Burr actually famously killed Hamilton in a duel. It's pretty crazy story up over here in Weehawken, which is north west of where I am now in Manhattan. So it was a coach house for a while. It was converted into this restaurant in 1973. It's been ranked one of the most romantic restaurants in the world. Definitely one of the most in the city. Did you have any other questions about the history of the place or anything? Or
Yeah, this is also before we get into the history of the place, we'll talk about the history of this series that we're in, which is Dishing on Dish. And
yeah,
as you can see, it's a series where Steven comes on and he just tells us about different restaurants that he's been to and the food that he's been, and we just kind of discuss it. Like he'll send me a document and I'll have the food there, then I'll ramble through the actual names of it, and we just go back and forth. Where Steven's history is working the food service industry and being a current gourmand, my interest in just cooking food and getting to know the history of the things. So we've had this series going on as a subsection of our You Are What You Consume series.
yeah.
And this one specifically is about just the food from specific restaurants. And we've done at least 9 parts of this. And what I was talking about at the start, we just finished a 3-part series, recording a 3-part series, talking about a new restaurant that just opened up right by Stephen called Dolly Varden. And I think I'm going to post this before the Dolly Varden series, because this is a
Sure.
1-part. We should be able to get this one done in 1 part.
Yeah.
And the way this series goes is we talk about the different restaurants in the first part or the single part. We do like an intro, we kind of talk about it, and Stephen gives us some history on it as he's given a bit there. Now we're going to talk about the place. So this will involve the location, the tables and ambiance, the content of the actual menu itself, and then we'll talk about some of the challenges of the dishes itself. So I think you've talked a bit about this, and this is interesting to me as well because talking about history, we've talked about different ones in the past of the You Are What You Consume series, where we're like, okay, how does something come from just being a regular dish that somebody's mom makes in their kitchen to becoming a part of the cuisine of a country? Because it used to, all these things did start from one or two people doing something, then it kind of works its way up to be part of it. And now you have a place like the United States of America, which is a it's one of the countries that I think is the best cataloged in its creation to its current state, and it was also occurring in a time when myth was kind of transferring away to like reality. Whereas you have like European culture, some of the things are coming from these older type of the gods, these kind of ideas, or royalty was having certain foods, and you have certain things like the foods and the dishes were kind of grounded towards the locations and places in there. So those ones we kind of think these are regional type of things. But this is something I think we've talked about. We've wondered what exactly is American cuisine, especially when we were talking the You Are What You Consume series, talking about the like when you talk about the French Laundry, you could say, okay, these are the French things. When we had the You Are What You Consume, when you're dishing on dish, when we talked about seasonal, you could see the mix of what was it, the Austrian and what else was Austrian and German
Well,
for
what I often said with seasonal was that there were a few Austrian and a few Hungarian staple dishes, but then
that
everything
was it,
else was
yeah.
kind of everything else was kind of whatever. I mean, definitely a lot of French influence, and then the occasional German dish thrown in, the occasional Japanese influence, whatever. Yeah.
It was like Orban was like banning, like, we can't talk about Orban's country. But so with those ones, you could kind of see more of that. Okay, this was from these people in these areas. But when
Yep.
it comes to American cuisine, there's different things we've talked about where it's like, okay, people like pizza or they like things like General Tso's chicken, and there's these other parts of American cuisine that's actually of cuisine that's people think are from other places but have been Americanized. So we're kind of just wondering what is actually American cuisine. So I'm very excited, very interested to see this One If by Land, which they're saying this is from the website. There'll be a website on the screen as well as we're talking about this. It says the finest American cuisine. This is what it says on the website here. And Stephen has been there. He went there with the missus. she might make an appearance here, or she'll be on. She'll be on to talk to us in different series that we have, or talk about food at some other time. But
Yeah.
went there for it was a birthday, right? Was it her
Yes.
birthday?
So
Yeah.
I've gone there about 4 times. I went with my mother a number of years ago. I'm trying to think, it must have been like 2008 or something. Like it was a while back, and I actually got foie gras when I went back then too. And then I went back on my
Stephen
own.
is that another history with that. Stephen is human foie gras,
Yeah.
and whenever there's foie gras, he will search it out and find it and consume it and make it part of himself. But
So
yeah,
and then I went back on my own in 2012 or so because I worked at Eddie and the Wolf, the other Austrian place. I just went on my own and sat at the bar, and then I took her there for her birthday. There was actually kind of a funny story behind that because I was trying to think of where to take her, and I was thinking about like the places that I like to eat and like, would she appreciate any of them? Then I was perusing Open Table, and I was like, oh yeah, why didn't this dawn on me? I'm like, one of the top romantic places. I've been there. I know it's good. My dad actually took mom there for one of their anniversaries, so I thought, this would be a nice touch. And of course, we'll put up pictures, the scenery and everything. I thought it was great. So I thought, okay, we went there for her birthday, and then I went once back on my own because I wanted a few more dishes to discuss just for the sake of this presentation. I went, like I
also
said,
to
I
eat
went,
the dishes.
and that too, yeah. And I went a while back, but I searched through my history and I couldn't find any photos or anything. So I guess I didn't take photos because I think, like I said, if I went in 2008, I had like a cheap phone back then. Then I mean, I didn't have an iPhone until maybe like 2014 or something. So it's like I probably just didn't take the photos at the time. So I thought, go back, try some more dishes, and just have something else to talk about. So I've been there 4 times. Yeah.
Yeah, and these are the lengths Stephen puts in order to provide content for this series that we have here. So thanks, Stephen, a lot for it.
You're welcome.
You can also find him on social media. We'll have a link somewhere that you can get that. He posts other dishes and other places that he's been to, and if you follow him there, you will be exposed to extremist content and also really good dishes and things like that that might preview some of the food that we're going to be talking about in this series or that we've talked about before. Because just because he's been to a restaurant doesn't mean he's not going back to get favorites that he's had, and also just slowly but surely, we'll be working our way back to some of the ones that we've talked about in the past to update it with new dishes. Like even just the series that we just finished with Dolly Varden, he just went back a few days ago and they've updated like the cocktails and the actual menu. Finally, I mean, we're talking in the entire series. We're like, okay, they seem to be asking around, getting ready to jump into the next. Sorry, getting ready to jump into the
Next
full menu
season.
because they had some people leave. So they had some people leave. So tell us now with this place, because is this a Michelin star restaurant?
It's Michelin recommended. To my knowledge, they don't have any stars. They won a bunch of the other awards like Zagat. I think they've won like Mobile Diamond stars and all that. I don't think they've won any Michelin stars, which kind of surprised me. I would think they would get one, but I don't know. Maybe they fall just short of that. I'm not
Mhm.
100% sure. But as far as I know, they've always been Michelin recommended. I don't know that they've ever had any Michelin stars though, sadly.
Okay, can you tell us a bit about the location? You mentioned a bit about it, like how many tables, like the ambiance, as y'all would have seen on some of the images that are going on the screen right now. There are some really good places. I think I'm here at the private party, so I'm good to share that there's a constitution room, the main dining room, and the mezzanine. So can you tell us about like the number of tables? They have the white cloth, which is something that you said is normally like a Michelin type of thing. So even Michelin recommended white tablecloth is a standard thing. But how many tables? What areas did you all go to for both when you went by yourself and also for the birthday dinner?
I'm not sure 100%. I'm not sure how many tables there are. It's a fairly big restaurant. I mean, we sat at the table by the window. There's like a little, if you look at some of the pictures, there's pictures by the window. There's like a little garden outside of it. I've walked around the restaurant. There's a staircase. There's a top floor. There's in the front. There's a bar area. There's actually a live piano player. They play pretty regularly. A lot of old school paintings and things. Like I say, there's a picture of Paul Revere on the way up the staircase. There's white tablecloth candles, fresh flowers on the tables, kind of old school. Like again, I mean, this opened in 1973, and I've often said that restaurants like this, like you wouldn't typically open a restaurant like this now because that style is kind of going out. But at the same time, because it's been around a while, they can do that. And I mean, of course, they've been successful this whole time. So it's if it's not broke, don't fix it.
I'm assuming those are not actual candles in the chandeliers. It's actually light bulbs, right? Like,
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
there are candles on the tables though. Like they go
okay.
around and light them. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so they have the main dining room, the constitution room, and then the mezzanine. Yeah,
Yep.
well, that seems like it has a bit of that old-timey feel to it. The mezzanine seems to have the smaller tables. It has maybe like four-seaters, two-seaters. It seems to be
Yeah.
mezzanine's also upstairs, right? It's like a first level. It's an Italian word, I think.
Yeah.
Mezzanine. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I don't remember that in
There,
Italian.
there aren't many big tables here. Like I think you can do big tables, but like in the event you want to, but like you notice most of the tables are 2 and 4 top because it's designed to be a
Yes.
romantic place. So I think I saw a 6 top. I mean, you could do it, I guess, but it's not really the kind of
Yeah.
place you come with a big group of people.
Well, but the thing is here they have private parties. That's where I'm
Yeah.
checking out these rooms. So I guess you could maybe rent out one of the dining. Maybe you rent out the Constitution room or the mezzanine and have maybe like a smaller, more personal like reception for like a wedding, or
Yeah.
maybe just having like some kind of graduation. If you just have something smaller, it could be something like that, a little more intimate. You're not going to have a big 200, 300 like people type of
No.
thing unless you rent out the entire place, which
Yep.
some people are will spend that much money, but you weren't the people doing that at the time. So now tell us a bit about now the menu itself, because like you said, this is American food and the food looks amazing. I saw the pictures that he posted in his Instagram. Also, y'all have seen it just scrolling through the website as we go here. And the different menu options are the three course prix and prefix or prefix, and then the 7 course tasting menu. So tell us for those who are not familiar with these terms, also just tell us about those terms and then specifically the actual offerings at this restaurant.
Just to finish the last point, one other thing I'm reading here, they can see there's up to 100 guests in the main dining room,
Okay.
and then for a seat for private event, they can seat up to 130 people and they can do 200 before a cocktail party. So there'd be a lot of people standing. So it depends on what you're looking to do. Like
Yeah.
if you're going to do one of those events where people are just going to get past hors d'oeuvres and drinks, you could do that. But then if you want to sit down, it's going to be fewer people. My old job, Batello, used to do both, but they do it in separate rooms. So there'd be like a bigger room where everyone could kind of stand around. And there was the main dining room where you'd have tables set up and everyone would get a seat. Just sort of finish that point. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Oh
regarding
yeah, I forgot though. Like, yeah. So when you go to the website, like I forgot because like when you go to the website, you click the menu, it actually downloads the menus. I'm going to download those and then I'll put them up on the screen. Yeah.
So regarding the menu, it's definitely like I say, I don't like to use the term New American, even though that's kind of popular. Definitely a lot of French influence, but of course there's other stuff too. For example, there's burrata, there's some pasta, there's yuzu, there's a hamachi sashimi. So there's definitely influence from elsewhere as well. It's I would say it's a lot of French style broadly, but then draws influences from elsewhere. It reminds me actually a little bit of seasonal in a way, in the sense that it's like broadly it's within kind of a certain range, and then there's a few little things that deviate. uh
Mhm.
this of course is definitely classified as fine dining. Each time I've done the prefix, it's 3 course 125s. There's also a chef's tasting for 175 at 7 courses. You can pair wine with it for $90, an additional $90, I should say. And the way it works with the 3 course is that you pick a course from each category. So like when Christine and I went, we each picked one from each category, and then we just kind of shared them so we could try different things. And then
Yeah.
for the 7 course, it's assigned to you unless you have a restriction. But like, they pick them for you. So and that's usually how it is chef's tasting. It's okay, you go through these, and if you have a restriction, maybe they'll accommodate you, but it's kind of left up to the chef. Yeah.
Yeah, because in the tasting they will have like smaller portions, like
Yeah.
then because it's a tasting menu. And
Yeah.
okay, yeah. So yeah, that's it for the actual initial questions. And for you seeing it, what was the difficulty challenge in some of these dishes that you see? And do you know if there's any cookbook or classes available?
I sort of compare it to seasonal where I used to work. I was just looking up now that it used to have a Michelin star, but they lost it. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Maybe they didn't reach something wasn't done a certain way. There aren't any cooking classes or anything or cookbooks as far as I know. I think it just kind of changes seasonally. Of course, the chefs change too. My guess is that there's certain things that are on the menu. Like I noticed foie gras is on the menu every time. That sashimi dish was actually on the menu when I went like a while back too. So I'd imagine there are certain staples, then certain things sort of change with the seasons. Like, okay, in spring, there's more green vegetables, morel mushrooms. In the fall, it's squash and all that, but it broadly stays within that certain range. The menu is not very big, as you noticed, but again, it's not somewhere I go regularly. So it's like,
Mhm.
come back, like, it's probably like one of those special events, and come back during another season. And then there's like those other seasonal items, and then back another time, and on and on. Like, I wouldn't, it's not somewhere I'd imagine eating every week or something.
And they're also selling the restaurant itself on the whole like romance aspect of it. So it's more
Yeah.
of a date night sort of thing rather than just like, hey, I'm hungry tonight. Let me go get some
Yeah.
food. So yeah. So you said the chef changes. Do you know if the chef has changed a lot? They had a lot of turnaround, or what do you mean by that?
I'm not 100% sure who like, but like I know, for example, like at Minetta Tavern, for example, like the current chef there was the previous chef from DB Bistro, and then
Mhm.
before that there was someone else. But the thing is, usually the chefs in these places, like, they don't have a huge following. Like they may have a certain niche following, like because he worked for Daniel Boulud, and then like he worked in another place, so like they have certain fans that will follow them, but these are not celebrity chefs. So I don't
Yeah.
know enough about the current chef. But it's not like one of these celebrity chef owned places where it's, well, even with the celebrity chef owned places, they're not there themselves, but the people running them are trained by people who worked for those people.
Yeah.
So like at Daniel Boulud's restaurant, those were chefs who worked with him or people trained directly by him at some point. Yeah.
But in a situation like this, you think if a new chef came in, there'd be a turnaround, and maybe like a third of the things might change just slightly, or just like the core dish would be there, but then maybe the side would change, or the presentation, the plating. What do you
Yeah,
think would really change if you had
yeah,
somebody go there?
I think it functions similarly to seasonal, where the owners want certain things on the menu, but then everything else, they're allowed flexibility. Like for example, in our discussion with seasonal, like Wiener Schnitzel, Tafelspitz, goulash, all that has to stay on the menu. But then like, the foie gras will change with the chefs, like the pork belly will change with the chefs, all that, because each one kind of has their own style and all that. And they sort of, the owners sort of leave it up to the chefs as long as it meets their qualifications. So usually in those situations, the chef will say, okay, here's a new pork belly dish I came up with. Can you try it? What do you think? And then they'll give feedback. And if they approve, it'll go on the menu. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking about the menu, the way we do this series is soon we're going to get into talking about the actual food, and our beautiful faces are going to go off of the screen, and then the food will actually be featuring if you're watching the video version of this. And also, wherever you're listening to this, they should be a table of contents, our own menu of its own,
Yeah.
so you can jump through the dishes. You don't have to like watch it all at once, or you could listen to this, watch it while you're cooking yourself or having dinner or something. It's just an accompaniment, and we kind of go through it that way. And when we're talking about the different dishes, sometimes we just go on the sides, following the different ingredients down rabbit holes into the history and the background of the things and like that. We'll just meander around there. But we just go from dish to dish that's actually presented there. Stephen occasionally or sometimes will give the accompaniment of the drink or the wine or the cocktail or whatnot that he's going with the actual drink.
Yeah.
So for those of y'all who are interested in that as well, he gives a lot of good input on that. So otherwise, how did you find this restaurant? Like you said, you've been to there before. When's the first time? Like, how did you initially hear about it?
It was actually, like I said, it was with my mother, and I don't know, I guess she's knew about it by reputation. I mean, it's been around a while, so I guess she read about it or something, and it was like, oh, we want to go to the city, and oh, there's this nice restaurant I think we should check out. And I'm trying to remember if this was like 2008 or 2009. It was either when I was in culinary school still, or I had just graduated or something. I hadn't lived here yet, but it was somewhere around that time. And she's like, "Why don't we check out this place?" And we went there. It was really good. And then like I always sort of knew about it, but then I didn't go back for a while later. I mean, I didn't make much money when I first lived here either, so it was one of those things that then once I was a little better off financially, I met one of the sous chefs when I worked at Eddie and the Wolf. But I was hanging out with at Seasonal because Seasonal was still open. I went there and I met a guy who was a sous chef there, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I work at One If by Land. You should come on by." And then when I went back to One If by Land, he wasn't there anymore. But these things happen. So, but of course I was there, so I just ate a meal, and then again when I was thinking about her birthday, I was perusing Open Table, and I was like, "Yeah, why don't I take her here?" So it's I think I've known about it for over a decade now, but I don't remember exactly like. I guess mom knew about it somehow or heard
Yeah,
about it,
because but you said your dad had taken her. Your dad
he,
took her after
yeah,
y'all had been there.
he took her because she and I went. We had a good time, and then I
Okay,
guess
okay,
she talked about it, and Dad decided like, why don't I take you there for our anniversary?
that's nice. Okay,
Yeah.
good stuff. Good stuff. The Kirshner romance locations. The Kirshner romance map is being set out to be passed on to the little boy Kirshners when he come on, or girl. We don't know. By that time in the future, these gender roles of dating might be switched around. She might be the one, or you might be dating a girl. I don't know. Let's not assume these things. Guys, gals,
Well,
and everywhere else in between, all welcome to this content.
well, look at it this way too. A Christina took me there, and then I took a Christine there. So
Yeah, yeah. Back with the Oedipal complex is going on in this thing. Okay, so from going with the Oedipal complex, that kind of myth, let's now go into the actual menu
sure,
of this kind of
sure.
mythically based Paul Revere-ish type of restaurant. Not the menu, but the actual dishes. So our faces are going to go off of the screen now, and I'm going to get into the actual food. You should have seen some images of the things taken through there. Some of the images will feature Christine and Stephen and things like that as we go back and forth through the dishes. And it's just starting off with something that just brings joy to my heart as usual. Stephen's human foie gras. I might be human burrata or just cheese in general. I just really like cheese. And the first one here, we have some Italian milk burrata with San Marzano tomato jam, aged balsamic, then pesto and Tuscan olive oil, and it's paired with a Chardonnay from California.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking of you with this dish because I know you love burrata, so I thought I'd give it a shot. So, San Marzano, for those who don't know, it's a type of plum tomato. It's popular in tomato sauce because it has a thicker flesh, fewer seeds, stronger flavor. It's sweet and has less acid, so it works very well for tomato sauce. So they made it into a jam. The jam, they likely added some sugar and salt to, a little bit of acid just to give it some flavor. Olive oil, you can see, aged balsamic. For those who don't know, this is authentic balsamic. You can tell by it was sweeter. And then pesto, the standard Genovese pesto, basil, pine nuts, garlic, olive oil. The roll it was on was really nice too. It was warmed up, so it went really well with all the ingredients. I just broke it off. I asked for some more bread. I really enjoyed it, and just spread each item together on the
The
bread and ate
bread.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, did you know if this was buff? Because they say Italian mozzarella, but then this is the problem with some of these
Yeah.
places that you live in. The different laws by the Food and Drug Association or whoever is in charge of the food, you probably can't really handle water buffalo milk. But in Italy, when they make the burrata or they make the mozzarella,
Yeah.
to be actually Italian one, they use the water buffalo. They even call it bufala mozzarella, is what they
Yeah.
normally call it there. So if you go and you say bufala mozzarella, it would definitely be that. I think you can still find mozzarella in Italy that's cow's milk or other kind of milk, but bufala mozzarella is where it's the actual goodness. And with burrata, it's just the amazingness of this. It's not just the amazing sack looking like kind of like the slimes from like comic book, no, from animes or mangas, but it's just that pocket of this goodness. And then it's not just a solid pocket of mozzarella gooey goodness, but it's like a shell of it. It's like a bag of it with fresh cream inside and big slabs of mozzarella, and you just cut it and it just oozes out. It's an experience. If you're somewhere and you even like cheese, just even a bit, even if you don't really like cheese, if you're somewhere and you can see it's a decent restaurant and you have access to burrata, try it or just check online. If you're listening to this, you probably live in a place where you might even be able to find it. Not even like a Whole Foods type of thing. This is a thing where it's becoming more common, but you can most definitely get it delivered to you somewhere. It's something I highly, highly suggest that you experience. And this serving with the balsamic vinegar and the olive oil is also the basic sort of way that's normally served in Italy. They normally go with, sometimes they'll put some tomatoes, but it's normally the prosciutto with balsamic vinegar, with the olive oil, and some crushed like black pepper. They'll just do the grinded black pepper. That's a typical type of thing. So here it's a bit of a different take on it. Yeah, sometimes they'll have the bread also. It's an appetizer aperitivo where they just bring out. Even here it was a part of the appetizer on the three
Yeah.
three meal pre-free, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
because
Yeah.
this time I went on my this was one of the time I went on my own and I just sat at the
Okay.
bar and I did the three course again. This is the one I picked. Yeah, and I paired it with the Chardonnay from California. One criticism I have is they don't list the wine list and dessert menu online. So when I go here, I have to
Okay.
remember to take pictures of the bottle and the dessert menu. I actually have a copy of the dessert menu. I can send it to you,
Yeah.
because like one of the desserts coming up, I didn't get all the info on, and then I forgot what it was, so I had to go back and look. But I mean, it's not a big deal, but it's like it's kind of nice just to have that info because then I can go back and cite it. I picked the Chardonnay from California because it's oak aged, so that tends to give this like buttery dairy element. And I thought that kind of complemented the cheese well. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so this is better. At least this is when you went by yourself. So you weren't sitting there thinking of Silas ordering the burrata with you, your
Yeah.
lady there sitting for her birthday.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want her like stalking you or something like, ah,
Yeah.
you. Okay, so the Chardonnay with that. And did this go with like, do you have, okay, with these, the three I forgot to check. Does that one also come with a wine pairing? But when you got into that, like,
No, that's I think you probably could ask. Well, I think with the three course, it's like you can just ask. It's more a la carte. But with the chef's tasting, it's like they customize. Like they'll give you a 2 ounce pour with each course, but they have it
mhm,
set in advance. So um, they'll do like start with like lighter whites and with heavier reds. If you go to like Babbo, which maybe we can discuss soon, they do a similar thing with the pasta tasting where it's each course they start with like a very light white and they end with a heavy red, but then each course they pour you a little bit and they tell you, okay, here's why we recommend this wine with this course. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah. And with the cheeses, what is your general, just quick advice? We have an entire series talking about casalula, which is just focuses on cheese pretty much. But what is your just quick suggestion for people who like cheese and like some wine? What is your suggestion of pairings that from your experience and your knowledge? Because you were actually trained a bit. You got into like the sommeliering, not the
So
juicy sommelier, but you sommeliering a bit, right?
Well, so what happened before I took my last job as a manager, the sommelier there was encouraging me to become a sommelier because he saw that I was passionate about it and I was learning the material. But then I got my other job, so of course I didn't take the position. I've continued to learn about wines on my own because I've been passionate about wines for some time.
Hmm.
I know more than the average person. I'm far from an expert. I learn stuff all the time, but it's wines have been a passion of mine since culinary school. So I look to learn everything I can. I got my dad a copy of that book that Laura recommended, Beyond Flavor, about visualizing the acid and tannin structure in the wine. That's been very helpful. Dad's been reading it too, but with both his background in chemistry and gardening, he's really into
Oh,
wines too.
cool.
So I really I like to pass on that knowledge because it really helps even the layperson, even if you just enjoy drinking wine with dinner occasionally, it's interesting stuff to learn about just so you can make dinner more interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and Laura is she's an expert. She's working in the natural wine industry in Canada, and she was on our I Know Great People series. Definitely great one. It's like 2.5 hour talk, just going
Yeah.
and talking about wines and different things. She's really knowledgeable about that. She also
Yeah.
has what's this? Is it crushable wine?
Yeah.
We'll try to post some links or somewhere for her content as well, because she's amazing on this stuff. Like, I don't drink anymore, but just I am a fan of people who are passionate about certain things. I'm a fan of information, and she's a wellspring of information, and also Steven's a wellspring of information in a lot of food things. But you said that with your background of it, but you still didn't give us a quick little kind of
Sorry.
rundown of what was good with the cheeses.
So it's interesting because Casa Lua had asked about that, and they were saying they don't really have strong recommendations. And I thought it was kind of strange. I don't know. I feel like they used to be more into that. Maybe they've drifted away, but I feel like with wine, with cheese, it's tough because cheese varies in intensity like wine. So, for example, if you have like a very strong blue, you would do like a port or an ice wine because you want something to sort of counter it, something sweeter. But then if you have a very mild goat cheese, you would want like a light white wine because it's like the port or something's just going to drown it out completely. So for me, ideally, they used to do that at Casa Lua. Again, I don't know why they stopped, but they used to do where they had the flight of cheese and they had like little servings of wine to go with each one. And I thought that was nice because you start with like a really light white, like I'm trying to think, maybe like a Sauvignon Blanc or something lighter with the white, and then you do like a bloomy cheese, like a little heavier, and then you do maybe like the oak Chardonnay or something, and then you finally finish with like a port or an ice wine, which is really sweet. But the idea is that, you know, you work your way up in intensity with the wine like the cheese as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's like, as you can imagine, if you have a very light um a very light wine with a heavy cheese, the cheese is going to drown it out. But then like if you were to have a light white with the blue cheese, you're just going to taste blue cheese. It's going to overwhelm the wine. But then if you have a port with like a goat cheese, you're just going to taste port because the port's so much stronger. So it's like the port with the blue
Yeah.
cheese makes, yeah, because you want them to sort of match each other's intensity. Yeah.
That makes sense, because, like,
Yeah.
for me, just being a neophyte, I would think you'd want some lighter tasting wine with like the stronger tasting cheese. Like, if you're getting like a gorgonzola, you'd want like something very light. But then, yeah, that makes sense. That would just
Yeah.
completely overpower it. There'd not really be any actual flavor you're actually getting there. So yeah, it makes sense. You'd want to have kind of matching each other instead of one being stronger or weaker. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, because it's the same thing with food, and there was something we learned about in school. It was really cool. I'll try to see if I can find a graphic for you, but it's called the Tower of Power. And what it is that typically, classically, they say you do white with white, red with red. So you do like champagne with white fish or chicken. You do red with red wine with red meat, which makes sense because of the intensity. But what our teachers were showing us was that you can do a heavier white with a lighter red meat, or you could do like a heavier white with a lighter sorry, you could do a lighter red with like a white item like a chicken, and you could do like a heavier white with a red meat item, but you have to sort of match the intensity. So like you can do a heavier white with like a very lean mild cut of beef, but then you could do like a very very light red wine if like the fish is like somewhat fatty or something. Yeah. So like
Okay.
halibut is a white fish, but you'll pair it with red wine because it's rich and fatty enough that it kind of works with red wine. But something like fluke, you have to do with champagne or a light white wine because fluke is so mild and lean that anything else is just going to kill it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here I found a website where it's called intowine.com. So I'll put a link there, and then Stephen can try to send me a graphic if he has. It might be on the screen. But saying here, so the most intense of the wines in the Tower Power Scale are Syrah and Petit Syrah. These two wines will dominate all but the richest foods, and they subsequently do well with any red meat that's been prepared with smoke, such as barbecue brisket. And then there's many others in the middle, and I'll just jump to the last one. The last of the lightest wines, the Tower of Power, are the stainless steel fermented versions of Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc. These two wines, like the oaky tannic structure of the barrel fermented counterparts, and thus have a greater degree of crisp acidity. So yeah, as you see, Stephen knows what he's talking about. He mentioned these things, but if y'all want some more info, anything we mentioned, definitely go check it out. This is kind of what we do with this. We kind of just jump through the things and we go through things. So anything else on that
What
amazing
one
thing?
other One other point on wine I was going to make is in school we talked about complement versus contrast. Like the idea is, does it work well with it or does it go slightly against it? But you have
Mhm.
to work that well where like you don't want something that tastes exactly like the thing you're eating because then it's just like, what's the point? But at the
Yeah.
same time, it's like you don't want something that's such a sharp contrast that it's weird. So I think you have to sort of, I think it takes some experience and knowledge to sort of figure that out as well. Um,
Yeah, there's
trying,
culinary arts. There's an
yeah,
artistic part about this that
yeah,
is involved. It's not just throwing things together. Although you can't just, as we've seen with this series, talking about certain dishes are just thrown together. Like, hey, we found this scraping while we're making something else. Oh, that's actually kind of tasty. Then all of a sudden,
yeah.
some kind of like delicacy. But yeah, but there's a testing and there's the taste testing process to get these combinations.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. That's all I have for the
Anything else?
burrata.
Okay.
Nope. That's all I
So
have.
moving on to the next one. Next one here is the seared Atlantic sea scallops with rosemary, smoked yellow tomato coulis, morel mushrooms, and leek fondue. Oh, the morels are back.
Yep.
Oh, no,
Yep.
have we talked about? Yeah, we've talked about morels before.
Yeah, so this is one of the when we went for our birthday, this is one of the first courses we ordered. I made some morels the other day. I don't know if you saw the picture at her house. They're expensive, not something I buy all the time. They're $70 a pound. Uh, so not something I buy all the time. It's like a nice treat once in a while, but I was saying like I'd buy them for me and like maybe her, but that's it. Like I'm not gonna feed them to my whole family 'cause it's like how much it costs, and they wouldn't really appreciate them anyway. But these are in season springtime. You can actually pick them near where I grew up. They're hard to find though. You got to go to certain areas in the woods. Of course, people who know where they are don't want to tell anyone because they want them
Yeah.
themselves. Um, tomato coulis is a puree, either fruit or vegetable. You typically strain the seeds out. I'm not 100% sure how they make this. My guess is they probably smoke the rosemary. Rosemary is very potent, and especially if you light it on fire, you can really smell it. So my guess is they probably smoke the tomatoes. Either when they probably either peel them and skin them, or they do concasse where you peel them, take out the seeds, poach them briefly so they're barely cooked. My guess is maybe they smoke them when they're in that state, and then puree that and strain it, make sure it's smooth. The morel mushroom, there's only one piece, unfortunately. I could eat a whole plate of these. I love them. And leek fondue. So I made that too at her house as well. And fondue, for those who don't know, it's the past tense of fond, which in French means to melt. So it's melted. So it's usually like the cheese, it's melted cheese. With this, it's cooked in butter, usually beurre monte, a little bit of water, a little bit of butter to maintain the emulsion, so the butter stays emulsified because butter is made up of fat, milk solids, and water. And the idea is when you melt, you put butter into the water, all those stay together. Whereas when you melt butter, you'll see them separating because
Mhm.
the milk, fat, and water will all separate. The water will evaporate. The milk solids will actually brown. That's how you get brown butter, and then the fat separates. But
So you
you
also
put
get
them,
ghee. Ghee is this
yeah,
like removing the milk solids.
yeah, that's also clarified butter, but I guess in India and other places it's called ghee. But the idea is that with beurre monte is you maintain the emulsion because the water keeps the butter together. So you melt the butter in water slowly, and then usually cook things in that. But then when you get the butter on the plate, it's the butter still holds its the water, milk solids, and fat all hold together. So the way I made,
Interesting.
I don't know what they do here, but the way I did it at her place is I cut the leeks up, I blanched them first, and then I just finished them in the beurre monte, and then a little salt. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like something I might try out.
Yep.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's
Yeah.
cool how that works. So, yeah, scallops are just there's not too much to say about scallops. They're just
No.
amazing. As per usual, we wish they were bigger, but this is what we
Yeah.
have to deal with. And of course, also the morel mushrooms. We hadn't spoken about morel mushrooms. I think I was thinking about something else, which we talked about in. I think it was in the risotto. There's a risotto that was at Dolly Varden. Some different mushrooms that we had talked
Oh,
about. I'm
those
forgetting.
were king trumpet mushrooms. So
Yes, yes.
that's the big one. It's cut into typically it's cut into little cubes or something, and you just saute the pieces. Um, like I say, morels are only in season in spring, and they're one of the pricier items. I mean, they're $70 a pound. Oyster mushrooms are like $8 a pound, and
Yeah,
then I'm trying to remember
like
if
button mushrooms are the cheapest. I think, like just a
yeah,
typical button.
and then king trumpet mushrooms, they're cheaper too, but like they're bigger, so you can cut them into pieces or slice them
And
up or
what are
whatever.
those? Yeah, some of the other expensive ones are those the yellow one, the chanterelles. Is it called chanterelles? They're like
But
very yellow. And they're
yeah, those are
like
chanterelles, a little,
curly
yeah,
chanterelles. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but the morels, I'm familiar with them. I don't know if you've just seen them somewhere because I'm just a fan of mushrooms. And just they have that creepy type of. There's that thing that you have where these holes are shapes in like odd, irregular shapes that kind of creep people out. They give people like pins and needles. Like it's on the screen if you've seen them. But yeah, I also saw this recent thing saying they've discovered that some fungi somewhere might have a language. Like they were noticing some enzymes being passed through the different mushrooms that seem to be a language or something. And also, like for y'all that you don't know, it's like random asides that we go on. The biggest organism on Earth is actually a fungi, some form of mushroom, where it's just like this huge colony of mushrooms over like acres of land. Also, if you've watched X Files, you probably you might remember the episode where like Mulder and Scully went to like some hill and they fell through and they were trapped in some kind of hallucinogenic thing where they had like they were together or something, and then it turns out like they were actually being slowly digested by this massive thing. But what we know about the massive, biggest fungi organism ever, it's not communicating with the smaller fungi to reap its revenge on us for coveting its tasty goodness and these kind of small morsels of it. So don't be too worried about it. But yeah,
One
so how
thing
many?
One thing about morel mushrooms, I was just going to say, is that they're porous, so a lot of dirt and sand gets trapped in, so you have to wash them a lot. I've heard at restaurant Danielle, they wash them. I'm trying to remember if it's like 20 times or something. It's some like crazy amount. The other things, I think Gordon Ramsay will actually take a blow dryer and just blow the dirt out. There's
Yeah,
different ways to clean them because the thing with mushrooms is they do soak up water, and you don't want them to soak up too much water because it
yeah.
absorbs the texture. But at the same time, you don't want to be biting into sand or dirt either, because like I've had that before where I'll bite into mushrooms that aren't clean. You'll actually feel yourself biting sand, which is not pleasant, and especially if you're going to a nice restaurant and paying a ton of money. But obviously, you want them clean as well. The other ones maybe we'll do in a future presentation, but also black trumpet mushrooms actually grow amongst pine trees, so they'll actually have pine needles inside of them. So at Les Spalier, where I did my externship, I'd have to wash them like 3 times or something. Like you throw them into water, pull them out, throw them into water, pull them out, and you see all these pine needles just float out.
Yeah, that's what happened with like the button mushrooms. Like I used to back in my neophyte days, not neophyte days. I just not looking more into certain dishes and how they're made. I used to wash them. Like you don't try not to do that with those. Just cut off the ends and stuff like that. Try to eat them as fresh as possible as usual. And but here in Kenya, there's some traditional ones from the Luya land area that I'm going to try to get the actual name of them, the actual try to figure out which type they are. But it grows in this like black cotton soil that we have in those areas. So like when you get them, they're normally dried and stuff, but you have to like really wash them out. And when they're dried, you soak them into water, and then you get them in different kind of sauces and things like that. Very pungent. Like even when they're completely dried, they could be like yards away, like 20 yards away. You can smell them. Like it's just like the smell that comes off of it. It's amazing. It's mushrooms. Mushrooms are great. So around. And with the morels, there's some mushrooms that you can grow, you can farm grow, but some of them seem to just be very, very particular that you just can't farm some of these things. Do you know kind of why that's the case?
I think it just has to do with each mushroom requires a certain environment to grow in. Like there's a certain level of moisture. I've heard with morel mushrooms, it's the melting snow feeds the spores, and apparently years where you have more snow, you have a better yield. So I don't know if that's something with like the water carrying certain nutrients and that causes them to grow better. I think some of this stuff still isn't fully understood because I forget if we talked about it, but they say that's the issue with truffles is that they've grown them in the US, but there's no flavor. So they're trying to figure out like, is it something about the soil composition or,
Mm-hmm.
like, is it like some fossil fuel type effect or I don't know. It's like, it's still being figured out, I think.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe we'll be able to ask them soon once we figure out this mushroom language, this fungi
Yeah.
language that they have here. Okay, so now on to the next dish, and this again is from the birthday dinner. And
Yep.
this is some seared foie gras with buckwheat crepe and crepe is crepe.
It's
Rose
actually pronounced,
petal
it's actually
crepe
crepe, but Americans say
crepe.
crepe. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then rose petal slash Meyer lemon jam. Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Cardamom, and they both started this with a glass of champagne. Champagne.
There you go.
Okay, tell us a bit about the Stephen Kirschner with buckwheat
So,
crepe.
so, so of course I saw this dish and I had to try it. It's a small piece, as you can see. I mean, it's an appetizer. Um, Seared foie gras. There's some frisee. That's the bitter lettuce. It's tossed in a light vinaigrette. My guess is probably like lemon juice, olive oil. That's it. A little bit of sorrel, the green on top. The crepes are nice. Browned a little on the outside with the rose petal and Meyer lemon jam. For those who don't know, Meyer lemon, Um, it's a sweeter lemon. You can actually eat it straight, and there's a little bit of rose in it too, just for flavor. Flavors work very well together. I think the cardamom is actually in there as well. I didn't really get much of it. It was more if it was there, it was very subtle. I didn't really pick it up. Really good dish
In the
overall.
batter, maybe.
Yeah. That maybe I didn't, like I said, I didn't really get much of it. But it was, it was a really nice dish. I mean, I loved the jam. I thought it was excellent. Like that's something I might make on my own if I can figure out how. Different flavors here, a little bit of sweet, a little bit of bitterness. The foie. The foie I would have cooked a little bit less. Foie you can actually undercook slightly in the middle. This was done all the way through. I mean, it was still good, but it's like I would have cooked it a touch less. And we started with champagne, just sort of celebration. I actually like pairing champagne with foie gras as well. Typically, a lot of people do like a sauterne or a muscat, like a dessert wine with it, which is fine, but it's kind of like cliche in our circles. And it's also like, it's the first course. I don't really want to start with a dessert wine. So, champagne pairs well with a lot of things. So I thought that'd be a good choice. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm wondering with these crepes, because if they're serving it like this with these kind of slices, I'm thinking part of why the cardamom might not be there, because this is some of the things that from being working in a restaurant, being in the back of the house and seeing some of these things. Would they make these like all at the start of the night and then they just slice them and kind of heat them a bit while you're in there? So maybe like the taste isn't as flavorful in there, because cardamom's a rather strong flavor. Because I'm wondering, like, what do they do with the rest of the grapes? But if they have these three pre-free, then they kind of know, like, everyone who's coming to get this, we're going to be serving at least this many of it. So maybe they prepare ahead of time and it's not something that's as fresh. I don't know.
Well, what we did at Les Spalier, and I think other places do, is certain things like this. If you know you're going to sell a lot of them, you prepare a bunch in advance because you know they're going to be gone. But then if you're slow or you're wrapping up towards the end of the night, you just do them to order because it's better quality. Like for example, I think I was telling Christine as well as a friend of ours that with like, for example, foie gras torchon, foie gras, once you cut it, it starts to oxidize. So like you want to cut it right before you serve it. But what we would do at Les Spalier was we would cut a few in advance and then layer it with paper. That way it's not exposed to air for too long. But the thing is, if you're busy, you're going to sell them. So you cut like 5 or 10, depending on the night. And then you sell those. And then once you start winding down, you just cut a few to order. But it's set up in a way that you're not going to waste any because you're going to sell them, but it's not going to slow you down either. So my sense is that's probably what they do here. Yeah.
So there could also be, is there like a preferred time to go to restaurants? Maybe if you go later, you get to get more fresh things, or how does this work? But it depends on the actual dish that you're getting, right? Because some of the things.
Well, like with my foie gras example, I would argue it's still fresh because the thing is you cut a bunch in advance, but it's not going to have time to oxidize because you're going to use them. Like you sear off certain meat in advance as well. But it's, again, if it's slower, you just do it to order because you're going to have plenty of time, and it's like you don't want to sear off a lot of stuff and not use it. So,
okay, yeah. With that, the leaf there, I keep confusing that with mint. I don't know why I keep doing that, but yeah, it's not. But yeah, so yeah, that looks good. That was an appetizer, and so okay, so this was the second appetizer. So with the three the pre-free.
Yeah,
dish pre.
Yeah, these both came out. These both came out at the same time when we ate, and we just kind of shared them. Yeah.
Okay. Which one did you prefer?
They're both really good. I mean, obviously, I'm biased towards foie gras, but I do love scallop though, and of course, I love morel mushrooms. So, as far as the dishes in of themselves, I mean, they were both like, this was a great scallop dish. This was a great foie dish. I mean, again, my only criticisms were the foie I would have cooked a touch less, and then cardamom I thought would be a little more prevalent. The thing that just occurred to me with cardamom, I don't know how much you've worked with it, but there's pods, but there's also seeds inside, and you can actually crush them open and strain off the seeds, and you can put the seeds in things. Like you'll still bite into them, but it's like, you don't want to chew on the pod, obviously. So what a lot of people do is they either simmer the pods and strain them out, or they just use the seeds directly, and then the seeds still have the flavor. So
yeah, it's rather common in Indian food. From like the Indian, like India, I guess India more. You probably be thinking of the right India, and with Kenya being a former British colony, once they colonized Kenya, Britain had already colonized, United Kingdom had already colonized India. So there's a bunch of Indian people that came over to help with just the managing and just building railways and things like that. So there's been multi-generational people who are now just considered Kenyan because they were Kenyan before Kenya was even a free country and have lived here since then. So it's about 45 million Kenyans. About 1 million of those are of from India itself, like with Indian ethnicity, and I think a majority of them, 90% of them are actually multi-generational. Yes, they still have people coming in and out because they still have those connections and things like that. But the cuisine has definitely found its way into Kenyan cuisine, and the different tribes and things like that that were not as developed as some of the Indian cuisines. They've taken on board, especially the spices and the things like that. So it's an interesting mix of different kind of foods. Like chapati is a staple type of thing for most Kenyans, and that's 100% an Indian dish. Yeah.
Sure. All right.
So that was it. And now we'll just kind of go over with other ones. The other appetizers here had here that we didn't go over were baby green salad, grilled octopus, Italian meal. No, we did the burrata, the fusilli calabrese, baby beet salad, and mushroom veloute. What's that?
Veloute. So veloute is one of the mother sauces in French cooking. I actually posted
Oh,
that meme
wow.
recently about, I don't know if you know. So it's actually stock and roux. For those who don't know, roux is fat and flour. Typically, it's butter and flour. Then that's used to thicken stock, and then the stock is flavored accordingly. Now, I would say veloute, like a lot of terms, like what I always say about confit, is it's one of those terms that's kind of been thrown around that everyone applies to everything. Like everyone,
Okay.
so it's just to sound nicer than it is. So my guess is it's probably a mushroom soup, probably thickened, probably stock base, and then they probably do a little truffle oil on the top. That'd be my guess anyway. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
so truffle oil will throw me off. I get headaches when I smell that
Uh-huh.
stuff. And then the hamachi sashimi. So those
Yeah.
are the other appetizers that you have there, and then daily selection of oysters for $5 each.
Yeah.
So if y'all are there, if you can see the food here, it's a quality food, and of course the ambiance and things like that, it's pleasing. So you can definitely check that out. Now, if you're ready, we can move on to the entrees.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so now we have a Maine lobster with yuzu risotto and a lobster bisque.
Sure. This was really nice. So this was actually Christine's reduction to risotto. She's been really into it since. I've made it
Hmm.
twice for her. So the lobster, in my sense, is they probably poach it in butter. It was a little tough. I would have cooked it a touch less because if you poach lobster in butter gently, you can get it actually very tender. Thomas Keller talks about this in his book where the lobster they cook so gently people actually think it's undercooked because it's very tender, but the thing is a lot of people are used to lobster that's been boiled to death. That's why.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you have lobster well made, I mean, you can get it really tender. What a lot of people do, and I'd imagine they do, is they steep the meat where you cook it, you either steam it or drop it in water briefly so the meat cooks just enough so it holds together, and then you pull the meat out of the shell and then you cook the rest of the way in butter. And usually the way it is that there's usually a flavored butter in a pot, and they just finish it in that and pull it out and put it on the plate. Seasonal did it this way as well. There was like a flavored beurre monte, and the
Is,
risotto.
is
Sorry.
is there like a membrane or something holding the meat to the shell? So you have to like kind of flash boil it first before it would release from the shell, or can you remove the meat raw from the
Well,
shell?
the issue is it's more likely to break apart because it's
Okay.
softer. But if you cook it, it'll hold its shape just enough. Then you can pull out and you get like an even lobster claw rather than
Uh,
a broken piece of meat. And I'm not sure what liquid was used in the risotto. As you can see, it's a deep white color, which is cool because like if you make it with chicken stock or something, it usually turns brown from that.
yeah.
Depending what you're doing. Because I made risotto twice at her place. I first used chicken stock, then I used fish stock. She liked we were making salmon one day, and because I thought like with fish stock it would sort of complement that well. To do it white though, I mean you could do it with water, but it's like water, it's not going to have the same flavor. They're also
Cornstarch, maybe?
well, I mean, no, because the thing is the risotto the rice breaking down is what thickens it. So you'd have to do it with either some white or clear liquid to keep that color.
How
And
about like a coconut milk? You think that would be good, a coconut milk risotto?
you could do that too. Yeah, I haven't
Yeah.
seen that, but I mean, you could do it, I'm sure. Um, I'm not sure what was in here, but it was a deep white color and it was flavored with yuzu. For those who don't know, it's the Japanese lemon. It has a slight evergreen flavor. I thought it worked really well. I thought it was creative. I mean, I'd never seen yuzu in risotto before, so I thought that was interesting. And then lobster bisque, for those who don't know, you take the shells, um, you flambe them with brandy and other things, usually mirepoix, carrots, onion, celery, or some combination of those. You usually grind the shells down. You simmer it with usually like a water or a fish stock, and then you strain it off and usually reduce it.
Okay.
So it's like you have that roasted shell flavor in the in the bisque, but of course make sure to strain out any shells because those get pretty rough if you were to yeah. But there's a lot of flavor in the shells, especially ones flambéed that like really releases the flavor. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that is something. And these little changes that you're saying with the overcooking and also the searing of the foie gras, that could be why they dropped from the Michelin star, because these small slight things are
Yeah.
do make a difference, and there actually is a difference in the actual enjoyment of the food. Because, like we said, people have tested these things back and forth. We both like experimenting on things, so it's definitely cool to experiment things. But there's certain things that are kind of go to things, and you can kind of build off of that. Like they could be a reason to have lobster tougher and cooked in a different way, but not particularly with this dish. It might not work as well with this dish.
Yeah. Um, like I said, it wasn't, I mean, it wasn't bad, but it's one of those, like, I would have cooked it a bit less because I remember, like, at Les Spolier when it was prepared similarly, I remember I had to communicate with the guy working in the fish station, and he was saying because if the lobster if he's running behind, he has to turn up the heat under the lobster and cook it faster, but that makes it tougher. But if I gave him plenty of warning about plating, he could like take his time and it would be gently cooked. So that's a practicality if you're working a kitchen, especially in a busy service where you have to plan where you have enough time to cook it gently so you put it up it's nice and tender, whereas if you're a little behind, you may have to turn up the heat and rush it a little, but then that's gonna be a little tougher than it should be. So, yeah,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, just double checking this. I think I checked this before. Like, why do crabs and lobsters and other shellfish go red when you cook them? I remember telling my mom that, and she was like, "Wait, they go red?" I'm like, "Yeah." I guess some people just haven't really realized, but she's definitely seen fresh crabs, and yeah, she's seen them before. She's been at the restaurants where they're in the tank. But
yeah,
yeah, it's something about them. So when people, so the vitamin shed, but why are they roaming free the ocean floor? Crabs and lobsters are usually brown, muddy green, or dull blue. There's some special, like occasional ones, like rainbow. There's a special sort of rainbow lobster that's caught, and it's like within the fishing space industry. It's like something that you take pictures of, and it's like bad luck. You actually have to like throw it back out into the ocean. Like it's just like, but it's just once in every 20 or 30 years they catch a certain kind of rainbow colored lobster and things like that. So the pigment responds strongly to heat. Or do you know why it does? I'm looking this up. This
I'm not
eating.
I'm not 100% sure. Like you say, there I've seen other colored lobsters. Like I've seen white ones, I've seen blue, I've seen black, I've seen different colors, but it's like those typically don't get cooked. Like people put them on display or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, here we go. So they say there are also those very rare blue lobsters, which fishermen consider good luck charms. Scientists think that 1 in every 2 million lobsters are born with this brilliant blue color, which is triggered by a genetic abnormality that causes them to produce a certain protein overabundance. Prized for their beauty, these lobsters are mercifully tossed back into the ocean by fishermen searching for their more common colored brethren. And but then there's also those huge coconut crabs in some islands places just creepy looking like massive spiders with like a little thing on the back, and the coconut tree clubs, and they're actually blue. So with crabs there's a lot of blue crabs but not too many blue lobsters. So they're going, okay, so they're saying why did they turn red? Lobsters and crabs have a pigment called astaxanthin. So yeah, I'm going to have my ability to say words for the first time. Astaxanthin in their shells, which has the ability to absorb blue light, making the shell appear red in certain conditions. When the lobster is alive, the pigment is safely stored inside a membrane hidden in the shell called the crustacyanin. It's packed so tightly inside the lobster shell that the pigment is trapped inside the membrane until unable to flow freely. Then that means the crustacean appears in those muted dark blue or green tones, and the pigment responds strongly to heat. Though once you dump a crab into the lobster, the boiling pot, the body chemistry changes, and the pigment astaxanthin gets separated from the membrane of the crustacyanin, transforming your dinner to that movie right here. Okay, so now we know some more information. I was also kind of wondering, like, why do most beans turn brown? I couldn't find the information of that because, like, we have different beans from like the farm we have here is like multicolored different beans, and the beans are really cool colors. But then, like, when you cook them, there's like these kind of weak browns, and like, it'd be cool to have these multicolored bean dishes. But yeah,
Sure.
okay. So moving on to the next dish, here we have 58. We have the, oh, yeah. Swirling. We have a rack of Colorado lamb with goat cheese polenta. Wow. Sage, zucchini, and mace saffron lamb jus. And
Yeah.
then Stephen had a glass of Pinot Noir from Burgundy for the second course, and Christine stuck with a Champagne. Yeah.
Yep. So you can see here's the rack of lamb cooked about medium rare, seared on the outside. Of course, the meat scraped off the bones. Goat cheese polenta, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. There's some sage. I want to say there's some sage. Let's see what else was in here. Yeah, zucchini, and then the zucchini, there's a little spiral at the top right. It's a little hard to see from this angle.
Yeah.
But it's like you slice the zucchini super thin on a deli slicer, and you cut it diagonally, and then you just roll it up and makes a nice little spiral. We used to do that seasonal too. I don't know if you remember from that presentation. You can do it with cucumber as well. I mean, it doesn't really change the flavor or anything. It's just more for presentation. A little bit of pea
Yeah, people
shoots.
also familiar with like spiralizers for like zucchini pasta. Like I do that sometimes. Like yeah, so people are familiar with that. Or if you're having gin, like yeah, anyway, right.
Yeah, so there's also some caramelized onions underneath here. And then mace saffron jus. For those who don't know, mace is a relative of nutmeg, so that's kind of flavor with saffron as well. So you have those different flavors, like a slight nutmeg flavor, which complements the lamb, the flavor of the meat. It works well, and I thought with the wine as well, because you figure Pinot Noir is like a moderately intense red wine, so it's like, and because lamb, it's a younger animal, it's medium rare, it's going to be not as strong, so you don't want an overly strong red wine. But Pinot Noir is kind of that, like it's stronger than like a rosé or something, but at the same time, it's not going to be like a heavy Cabernet Sauvignon, which you'd pair with like a rich steak. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the thing with the mutton itself. It tastes like irony. It's almost like more bloody of a meat than beef or even goat. Or definitely like yeah, it's something strong about. That's why I think lamb. When you're talking about sheep's lamb is eaten a lot more than the actual grown animal itself. It's like sheep's milk. They use that as well too, and of course for the wool, depending on the type of it. But yeah, that jus sounds interesting. I'm trying to think of those tastes that would work together, because saffron itself has a really unique taste to it. So those two, and then of course the polenta. In Kenya, a common thing we have here is ugali, which is pretty much just like polenta, but just cooked with more flour, so it's more thicker. But I do this flavali thing where I put different flavors. Have not yet done cheese in it, but I'm definitely going to do that now that this has come up. It sounds really good. So yeah, that mace and saffron again, like I'm interesting. I'm trying to think of the taste.
So one more comment on mace. So mace, I'm reminded, is actually the nutmeg is the seed of the plant. The mace is actually the outer
Oh,
shell, the
okay.
protective. And what's interesting, because those are technically classified as two spices. So mace, it's kind of similar to nutmeg, but it's a little sharper and less sweet. It's similar to nutmeg, but it also has other notes. Some people pick up pine, black pepper, coriander. So I'd have to have them side by side, but I do remember them being different. I mean, if you were to taste it, you could definitely tell they're related, but I'd have to do side by side to really tell them apart. So those elements work well with lamb, because like I say, lamb, it's red meat, but it's also a younger animal, so it's milder. Whereas something like mutton, the adult sheep, is going to be much stronger. I remember my teacher in school talking about that's why a lot of people do lamb with mint jelly, because typically people did lamb with mint jelly with mutton, because mutton is such a strong meat, you basically want to drown it out. But because lamb is milder, you can do other things with it where it'll complement the flavor rather than you're trying to drown out this ultra strong flavor that's just too much.
Yeah. This nutmeg is. I know nutmeg was such a weird looking plant. The little nuts like this. It looks like that. There's this in this anime Berserk or this manga. There's this Beihite thing. It was like this kind of stone with like his face that kind of moves around, like the eyes and the mouth and stuff. And this kind of looks like it just opens up from this yellowish shell. It's just creepy looking. Yeah, but yeah, okay. So I can kind of think if it's tastes a bit like nutmeg, that'd be an interesting mix of taste together.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, but the jus, the sauces, we definitely. I'll post on the chefnewtop.com, chefnewtop.carbon33 com site. You can definitely check it out there. I'll post a link to that mother, because I remember when you put the mother sauces type of thing, that's definitely something I need to keep in mind. We've talked about this before. If you're cooking at home, you know how to do some of the basic things, or you're learning just completely from fresh. Sauces are a key thing to just have accompaniments with it, because you can even have a thing where it's like, okay, you don't really feel like eating so many things. You don't have to have like a 3-course meal with like a starch, a protein, a veggies. You can just think, okay, I'm just gonna have some meat, but then you accompany that with a good sauce, and that could be like a dish in and of itself. Just having that on the side can just kick up your basic dishes up to a different level just by getting the right accompaniment with it in that kind of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Not a whole lot else to say there. I thought it was a really creative pairing. I I don't know which one she preferred the lobster. I mean, I like both of them, but I also feel like some of these dishes it's hard to pick because it's like they're very different dishes. So it's like I can't really say like which one I prefer more because it's like they're
Yeah.
both like they're both great in their own ways. But like I'd feel better comparing if we had like multiple lobster dishes and we're doing side by side. But if it's like two
Mhm.
really different dishes, it's hard to say which is better. Yeah. But
Yeah.
she also prefers lobster and risotto. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but here now we're going to the last of the entree, which is the one where you went when you were by yourself, right?
Yep.
And this is the beef Wellington with a
Yep.
mushroom duxelles,
Duxelles. Yeah.
duxelles, and then the beurre rouge and
Yep.
haricot vert, and paired with a Bordeaux blend. And
Sure.
beef welly is one of the things I've I want to make, but it's like a process. And this is the thing that
Yeah.
we've talked about in certain restaurants. If I see something, I'm like, chances of me trying to make that at home, like that whole process is very low. That's a higher chance that I'll order it, or it's something that I make a lot, so I'll order it so I can figure out different ways to do it. But yeah, this is something that I keep thinking I'm going to do this eventually, but it's a slog to make some beef welly.
So this is one of their signature dishes actually. I have to say I was actually a little disappointed. It wasn't bad, but it was like the meat was a little overcooked. Like it wasn't I ordered it medium rare and like you can see there it's
It's not
darker if you
medium rare.
no. It's if you cut into it a little more, you could see it was a little more red in the middle, but it was definitely over. It was also a little drier on the inside than I would have liked. Like it wasn't like bad, like I would send it back, but at the same time, like I would give it maybe 3 out of 5 stars or something. Um, the one at Russian Tea Room was actually a lot better, and like Russian Tea Room didn't impress me overly, but just like overall, like because that one it was a little more moist, the meat was medium rare, all that. Um, I don't know. Maybe if I maybe then maybe I mean kitchens do have bad days. Like maybe if I came back and like there was a better person working, it would be better or something. Um, the butter was nice. Beurre rouge just means red butter. It's a reduction of red wine finished with butter. Haricot vert green beans. Um, again, wasn't bad, but I think the other dishes were so much better, and especially for this kind of place, it's like I was let down a little bit. I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if they're saying it's their special. Even like it's just
Yeah.
made in, and these are personal sized beef wellies.
Yeah.
Like they make small ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you'll see on the screen. I'll put up images. You're not even supposed to really ask people if they want medium rare. Like medium rare is how you're supposed to serve beef Wellington.
Yeah.
Like that's like the go-to. You're supposed
Yeah.
to have that redness in the
Yeah.
middle there. And this is definitely this is saying it. Is it possible that these are? Again, we're talking about when they're made. Is this like it's made ahead of time? Then they put it in the oven, maybe there was some commotion or somebody had ordered and they
Yeah.
decided not to and just stayed in the oven too long. It seems lacking
Yeah.
for a
I
while.
mean, I'm somewhat forgiving of this stuff, and like I say, I acknowledge that even the best places have off days, so I don't want to be too harsh. But if I came back over and over, and the experience was kind of like that over and over, like I wouldn't come back. So I'd just be like, it's not that they don't care, but it's like they're either cutting corners or they're not as focused, or like you can kind of get that vibe. And I mean,
Yeah.
who knows? There could be yeah, I came in. I'm trying to think. It was earlier in the week. Maybe the chef was off. I mean, the thing is, they always emphasize that with restaurants, you're supposed to be consistent, like whether the chef is there or off or whatever. Because some places will use that as an excuse. But that's one of the challenges that even when the senior people aren't there, you have to make sure the food's the same. Because if you get someone important who comes on a day when they're
Yeah.
not there and the food is lacking, they're not going to come back. They'll write a bad review or whatever, and then
Or if you
that's going to
lose a
hurt.
Michelin star.
Yeah. So, because one of my friends really loved it, and again, like I said, maybe he came back, it was properly medium rare. Maybe there was more mushroom. Duxelles was a little moister. I mean, who knows? But it's like, I was let down a little bit given the restaurant's reputation, especially that this was one of the signature dishes. Yeah.
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 So that's it for the entrees. I think we might miss the. We might just post. Yeah, okay. Let me just read through the other entrees that we have here that were not in part of this. So there's a black sea bass. There's a Rohan duck breast. I'm interested. We talked about the different kind of platings of the duck breast. Was that in? Yeah, that was in Dolly Varden, right? Was Dolly Varden that had different
Yeah,
platings, or is that the rest?
yeah,
Yeah.
that
So
was a
the
duck. Yeah.
different cuts of it. So because it's normally just the breast, I would be interested to see how they plate it here. Then the Maine lobster. Then the coq au vin, which we've had at what restaurant had the coq au vin?
Um, trying to remember now. Minetta
Was it
Tavern has
Minetta?
it.
Minetta. I think it was Minetta where we.
Minetta has it now, but I don't think I posted and reviewed it because I think it got put on the menu during winter, and I was like, oh, I have to try that because that's a
Could it have been
classic.
Seasonal? We've talked
Oh,
about it before. Is it
D,
Seasonal?
DB Bistro, that's what it was.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, because DB's a French place, yeah.
yeah,
And then Okinawa sweet potato gnocchi. That's cool. So that's a
yeah,
different take on
yeah,
things. Now that's and I think that probably is what American cuisine really is.
yeah,
It's taking cuisines from different places and just doing it like an American spin on it. So that's
yeah,
something. And the sides go there's the truffle mashed potatoes and the seasonal vegetables. So that's been the entrees from one if by land to
yeah.
if by sea. Now we're going to transition into the desserts as we get to the home stretch of this. And thank you all, guys, gals, and everybody else in between, and Stephen for slogging through all this horrific food in order to eat and come and share it with us. And here we have the apple tart tartan with a vanilla ice cream.
All right, so this is a classic dish. She got this. This was one of the dishes she requested. For those who don't know, there's a whole story about the Tatin sisters in Paris where
Mm-hmm.
they were cooking apples on the stove. They left them on a little too long and they got caramelized. So they decided, okay, why don't we make something out of this? So I guess they put the apples or whatever. I think they were apples originally in a pan, put the crust on top, baked it, flipped it over so it has the caramelized fruit on top and it's open, as opposed to the pie where the fruit's not caramelized and it's covered. Some julienne apple, Granny Smith, you can see here, some caramel sauce and vanilla ice cream. Classic dish. I mean, it was good. I mean, it wasn't, not something I'm blown away by, but it was a nice dish. And she wanted to try it. I was saying I think we should make it at some point because I feel like this is something I could probably execute. It's not too hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And the four C's again, Stephen had told me about these with the desserts. It's chocolate, caramel, citrus, or coffee. Those
Yep.
are the four C's that are normally included in different
Yep.
desserts in different places. Now, with the ice cream here, when do they make the decision to do that thing I keep forgetting the name of it, that kind of
Canal.
ovalish, yeah, the canal thing. Why, when do you canal, when do you scoop?
I'm not 100% sure. I think it depends on the place. I think it's also the chef's preference. Like maybe my guess is here, like for example, there's a quenelle coming up on, well, actually quenelle on the next two dishes. So I don't know, maybe they don't want to seem redundant. So maybe a certain dish they're doing a ball, others are doing, yeah, I'm not 100% sure what goes into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, you've had tarte tatin before. How did this rank up compared to the other tarte tatins that you had?
It was good. It was nicely presented too, the nice layers of apple. I thought that was nice. I've seen like Gordon Ramsay in his cookbook. He has some recipes where he does like this nice like sort of like he almost shingles the apple slices, or there's even one I saw someone was doing with clementines. I'd like to try that. That sounds really good. You caramelize the clementines a little bit,
Okay.
bake them, flip it. Yeah, I think like you can do pear, you can do a lot of stuff. I mean, as long as the
Oh,
sugar.
so they sub the apple out completely. It's not apple with clementine, but just the
No, no.
clementines instead of
Yeah,
apple.
yeah.
Okay.
Because
Yeah,
those
this is
those would
something that
all
we thought of, like those things of trying different things where you just remove an ingredient and put something else, as long as you're getting the same effect. And as you mentioned, the caramelization is something that you want out of the dish. That's a key part of the dish, but the apple doesn't have to be the key part.
Because the thing is too, if you were to do both fruit, I guess you could, but you'd have to cook them separately because they'd be done at different times. Like they would,
Mhm.
uh, like for example, um, I did a cranberry apple pie at home, but if I remember correctly, you cook the apples and the cranberries on the stove separately, and like you have to make sure both are done. Then you combine them, then you bake the whole thing because you figure cranberries and apple slices are going to be done at different times. So things like that. Like I think you
Yeah,
conceivably could do that, but you'd have to have them separate, then combine them and bake it all at once. That'd be my guess
yeah.
anyway. Yeah.
And then also there might be something behind if you know how the dishes came to be. If this was more like an accidental thing by the Tatin sisters, Maybe some of the ones that are more accidental, there might be more flexibility with taking out the primary ingredient as long as the effect was there. Because like here, it was the effect on apples that was the key part of this
Yeah.
dish. So that shows that it's more versus. There might be some that the main dish, the people who are developing the dish were developing it on the actual ingredient. And if you switch out that ingredient, you might lose a key part of the actual primary dish that you're having there. That could be something to think of. I'll start thinking about that with other dishes that I make.
Well, to add to your point too, it's also like what you're striving for. So, for example, when I was making hollandaise sauce, I remember one of the times in school I added black pepper to it. My chef was saying, "Don't do that because you see specks of black in that," which like some people are fine
Yeah.
with, but other people feel. He's saying, "Don't do that unless you're selling it as black pepper hollandaise or something like that." So,
How about
like,
using white pepper? I mean, we don't like white peppercorn, but
you
that
could
could
you,
be
you
something.
you could do that. That's what he was telling me. He's like, if you want pepper flavor, use white so you don't see it. Like, unless again you're specifically selling it as that thing. Yeah.
Or this is like the squid ink hollandaise. There's some squid ink in it. That stuff. It's ink. It
Yeah.
literally is ink. Like they're not playing around with that. That name is rather accurate. It's not that tasty. It will ink up your mouth. It's black.
Well, I showed her the we were talking about risottos, and I showed her the one from Felidia with the squid ink and the
Yeah.
golden calamari and stuff. I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bit severe. That was kind of severe. Okay, so moving on to the next dessert here, we have the yogo, which is a pate sablé and a yogo lemon mousse, yogurt frosting, and a lemon sorbet.
Yep. So when we went for her birthday, this is the other one we had. It's actually pronounced pat sablé.
Pate
The
sablé.
notice the aigu accent. Pat sablé. It's a short crust pastry dough. So that's basically what you see on the bottom here. It's so it's kind of like a play, I guess, like shortcake. I don't know if that's the best comparison. Um, there's a lemon mousse. That's what's on the pate sablé. Yogurt frosting. I think that's self-explanatory. That's on top. Lemon sorbet, and then there's a piece of white chocolate. There's two pieces of white chocolate, one on each side, and then there's more of the frosting, just sort of as a design on the plate. I like this dessert a lot, actually. We got this because when we went, I was debating. We got the apple, and I was debating on chocolate, but I thought I wanted to do something different, so I thought, why don't we try the lemon dessert? And I really liked it. Yeah.
Okay. Yogurt frosting?
Yeah.
Is that just yogurt used as frosting, or is there some reason to be calling it frosting?
No, it's frosting, like it's typical icing, like it's shortening and sugar based. I think there's some yogurt in it, so it's still the texture.
Okay.
It's similar to frosting. It's a little lighter. They probably fold some yogurt into it to get it a little lighter, so it's not as thick and sticky.
Okay.
Yep.
And the yogo is just the name of it, because I did a search of yogo, and it's like the brand of like yogurt or something.
Yeah,
Something
I think that too. I think that too. I haven't heard the name before. I'm not 100% sure about the sorbet though, because the thing is, sorbet by definition doesn't have dairy in it. But the thing is, this is obviously white in color, and you can see vanilla specks in it. So I'm not sure what they put in it to make it like that, because you figure lemon juice on its own, it's going to be clear looking. So I don't know what they added to make it the white color. Because if you were to add milk or cream, it would be lemon ice cream, not lemon sorbet. So I'm curious.
They add whatever they used in the risotto, they added to this too. Again, it could be coconut milk. I don't know, but then coconut milk normally has the actual taste of it. Although I know you can have coconut oil without the coconut taste of it. Somehow they remove the coconut taste of it. I don't know why anyone would want that, but that's possible. So there might be a way to also remove the coconut taste from coconut milk, so you can still have that in there. But again, I don't know why you'd want that. I mean, part of having the coconut milk, so I want the coconut. I like the coconut oil, coconut milk, coconut cream, everything. Coconut is just a go-to thing for me. Okay, so yeah, decent plating. So those are the two that you had for the birthday dinner. Now we're going to
Yeah,
go to
exactly.
the one that you had here. And this is the chocolate trio, or chocolate trio. The chocolate trio: dark chocolate caramel, hazelnut crunchy, and a caramel ice cream. And you pair this with a 10-year-old port.
Yep. So crémeux actually means creamy in French. It's like a mousse. It's a little bit thicker. So the idea, as you can see here, it's the different chocolates, because it's the chocolate sauce on top. There's physical chocolate like that, and then there's a chocolate mousse. Then there's a hazelnut layer on the bottom. if you remember when we did the seasonal presentation, the gianduja, the hazelnut dessert, that layer is very similar. It's like a hazelnut flavored layer.
Okay.
And then, yeah, works very well with chocolate, and then caramel ice cream. I think that's pretty, it's milk. Caramel's likely folded in. So you taste the caramel in there. No vanilla bean. You can see a little caramel sauce underneath. To complement the flavor and also to hold it up. This was nice dessert too. And then the port, typically dessert wine, there's like 10, 20 year. I'm trying to remember if they had 30 year or something. The flavors develop over time, like with port, for example. It's not so much a question of sugar, but there's port has a certain depth of flavor that the more like a lot of things, the more you age it, the flavor is going to develop a bit more. So it's going to be, I'm trying to think of how to explain it. Like it's going to be it's basically it's aged in barrels, then it gets oxidized, and then it sort of absorbs certain flavors over time, and then as it ages, you're going to get different smells and flavors. It's going to be more developed. Typically, you'll get like red, you might get red fruit, you might get certain spices, all that. It's like balsamic or something. Like it's better if you age it longer, but of course you're going to be paying more money because it evaporates too, so the yield is going to be lower. So this was the cheaper one. I mean, I'm sure the 30, 40 year would have been really good, but it's like,
Yeah.
would it cost a little more? So I'm like, do I want to spend the money?
Yeah. You still get the effect without
Yep.
you to splurge on the top ones. Yeah.
Sure.
Maybe in a couple more years after you've upgraded the stocks game, you're like, yeah, I was good. But as you said, there's still some things I think, to me, I just find hard spending certain things. Even if I was like a billionaire, I'd be like, I'd be kind of thinking twice. But then on some other things at the same point, I'll just like spend a lot of money on and just be like, it's odd to really figure out the calculus for that and when things flip or when
Well,
and where they
it's
don't.
it's subjective value. Like I've said before, like there are people who will spend a fortune on clothes, and I'm like, why are you paying this? Or a fortune on
Yeah.
cars. But then they look at the food that I'm eating, they're like, why would you spend that money? So it's like, it depends on your own value preferences.
Yeah. And I guess we can move on to the last dessert before I
Sure.
read off the list of the desserts. And this is just something Christine had for her birthday dessert. And it's like an orange pate de fruit with a chocolate chip. So tell us a bit about this pate. I'm interested to see, because it
So
sounds like something I'd probably want to try to make. It's like a big gummy bear type of thing.
yeah,
Or what
so
is it?
pate de fruit, for those who don't know, it's actually made using the it's basically it's used it's similar to a jam. It's based off sugar and pectin. Pectin, for those who don't know, it's a natural like sort of starchy element found in certain fruit, like quince has a lot of it. That's why quince is good for jelly and jam, because when you cook it down, that pectin is released and it thickens it. um you can also buy pectin in powder form and add it to things to thicken them. And well, what a lot of people do, we'll do a presentation on Print. Print did it as well, where they have pate de fruit that changes daily, and basically they take a juice or a puree, and then they add the pectin, and they also they add sugar, and then they cook it down and cool it. Then it solidifies, and it's like almost like you say, kind of like a gummy bear. But gummy bears are typically made with gelatin. These are made with pectin, so it's like texture, I guess, is kind of similar. This is a little more well, I guess gummy bear is a little more chewy because the gelatin gets almost rubbery. This is more like, trying to think of what to compare this to. Hmm.
Yeah, I think I've had these from, like, yeah, there's going to be an image on the screen. Really nice colors with these things. You can just,
Yeah.
but also, yeah, it's because it won't. It's kind of chunkier, maybe.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
it doesn't get as fluid, because like gummy bear is like literally like a single. The mold is into a single now piece, but this one would have more of a. It's not as. What's the term? There's a term where things that mix together and they're perfectly mixed together, so it forms as a single solid, whichever kind of shape it is. But
well,
this one will be more not emulsified, but more.
Well,
Ah,
because gummy bears are made with gelatin, so like I say, they get really tough. That's why you're like really chewing on them. Whereas these are a
yeah,
bit softer, but at the same time, the pectin has thickened them enough that it holds it together. Whereas if you have a jelly or jam, the pectin thickens enough so like it sort of holds its shape, but you can spread it. Whereas this is like, I guess I could say this is something between jelly and a gummy bear, where it's like
yeah.
it's not it's not so loose. Like the idea of pectin with jelly is that it thickens it enough so you can like it'll hold its shape, but you can still spread it, but it's not going to run everywhere. But then with the gummy bear, it actually gets solid. Like that's why you're chewing. And then this is like something in the middle, where it's like it's
Yeah.
holding its shape. It's like you can't spread this out across a plate, but at the same time, like you're not going to be really chewing like with gelatin either.
This might not be the best example to use, but like, cause like, like Play-Doh itself, like you can kind
Yeah.
of break it apart, or it's not like, but you can stretch it a bit, but you can break it. Whereas you have like the goop type of dough, or like your plasticine kind of, yeah, okay. That's kind of what I'm thinking I think I've had them before, and I think that was the primary difference. Okay, so do they have the dessert? No, yeah, you said they don't have the list of the desserts. So do you have any idea what other desserts they had here?
Yeah, they had a chocolate souffle. Let me see here actually, because I took a picture of the menu. I can send it to you as well. We can include it in this.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, we should be there at the start because I've downloaded the three pre-free. I was going through that, and then then there's a
yeah, because
PDF for the actual 7 course one.
yeah, because it's kind of weird. It was kind of weird. I thought how like they didn't include that on the menu. Like you had to go back. Let me see. Okay, I have it here. So there's chocolate souffle. There's something called a trianon. I think it looks like a French word. Trianon. I'm not familiar with that. That looked interesting too. There's almond, chocolate, and other things. There's a yogo. There's a chocolate trio, which we had. Napoleon. That's a layered dessert with fruit. And then there's the apple tarte tatin. And then there's also you can do selection of cheeses, $4 supplement. I'm not sure how many cheeses they give you, and there's also a selection of sorbet, ice cream, and gelato. My guess is that those probably change season by season. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I think that's it.
yeah.
That's it for the food. Now our face is now back on the screen. Now, yeah, we actually did it under time. We normally try to keep these to around an hour and a half
Yep.
per episode, or per dish, per restaurant. No, not per restaurant, per episode of these, because most of the restaurants we've done were multi parts. Seasonal, I think, was the longest one. We had a 5 part for that one,
Yeah.
but most of them normally ranged like 3 parts. So on average, we have like 3 parts per restaurant. We're thinking of also doing like shorter ones where we just come in and just might be a place like he just finds out, or this is one thing we're thinking with the ones that he's been to, if he finds some new dishes, and that's something that we're looking into. But that's things that we're talking about, and we'll also be getting other special guests to come in and talk about these. Because if you've been following the series, you've seen at the start, Stephen was just soloing these places, bravely going by himself to these amazing food restaurants and stuffing himself for this. But now he has Christine along with him, so she'll be accompanying him to some of these places. So maybe she'll eventually come on and talk to us. But we also have other people like Abram. You talked about you'd gone to like a Jewish place, and he was like kind of interested. You talked to sort of in passing to come on and talk to us more about like maybe the different kind of kosher foods that they have in the New York City area. And we also had the general request for any of y'all out there who have been to New York City and you've had places that you've been to or you're interested in that you want to suggest Stephen goes checks out. We're open to y'all hearing that. And then, yeah. But yeah, so that's it for this one. But tell us a bit, just closing thoughts on this restaurant and your experience there.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a really good place for the birthday. I think very romantic place. We took a lot of photos, and she did some videos as well. Like there's the one of me handing her the rose and all that. I thought it was very nice.
Oh,
I definitely would like to go back, try some of the other stuff. Like I said, I was a little disappointed on the beef Wellington. Like it wasn't bad, but it was like for the type of restaurant it is and how much it costs, I would have higher expectations. Again, not going to go back a lot. I mean, it's a little pricey. Plus, it's like the menu is pretty small, so you could go
mhm.
back 5 or 6 times and try everything until the menu changes. So I wouldn't go all the time. I mean, I went twice on my own, but again, it's like it's more meant to be like a romantic sort of occasion place. Let's see, what else would I say? Yeah, beautiful interior, live piano player. It's
Okay.
one of these. It's one of these. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, there's a live piano player. It's one of these places that it's allegedly haunted, and there's all these stories of like people alone late at night and feeling themselves being pushed by the stairs and hearing the piano play and all this. Yeah, for those who are interested in the paranormal, it's pretty interesting. And the lady is waking up now. Let's see if she can say hi real quick. If not, another time.
Yeah.
Um,
Maybe after.
so so for future presentations, I'm thinking of doing one on print. I went once on my own, once with her. I may go back once more.
Okay.
That way we have like 3 entrees, 3 appetizers, 3 desserts. Babbo, I think we should probably do soon because Babbo I've been to I went there at least once or twice on my own. I went once with Andrea. I went once with her. Oh, and then I went with my mom and friends. So like I have a bunch of content for that. Let's see what else. I'm trying to think. Dolly Varden eventually. I mean, we just did one, so I'm not going to do it now. But eventually down the line, go through all their cocktails and menu items again. And I haven't been eating out as much lately because she and I have been cooking together, which is good, saving me money. And I'm still going to eat out, but I think it's probably better eat out less, save a bit of money, cook more from scratch. She's got a decent kitchen, so we've been doing that. And then, occasionally like weekend or something, get a nice dinner somewhere. I do want to go back to Babbo again. Maybe here, next occasion we'll go here. Trying to think what else. I mean, eventually down the line, I want to go to places like Per Se or Danielle, but I want to be doing really well financially, and that'll be like really definitely a special occasion place. So
yeah. All right. So yeah, so that's it for this restaurant. We have, as I mentioned, when this is posted, there's already 3 parts already done for Dolly Varden, so I'll be posting those after this. There's already like 9 other restaurants in this series. You can go to that before. All of those have the menus there. Stephen has already mentioned in this, there's a different few places that he's already got set up. There was a couple of month break that we took, mostly because of on my end of not having the equipment to actually get the actual recordings going. But during that time, there was other restaurants here before when we started that we hadn't gotten to yet. But then he was also going out with guests, and that's why I was saying like the smaller ones. It's like the Russian restaurant you'd mentioned. You'd been there with a couple of friends. So there's content coming with this one, and we also have different other series of other things coming up. So a lot of good content coming up. If you've enjoyed this, like we enjoy having these conversations, thank you all very much. Like, share, subscribe, share with people. Let us know this. Let us know what you think in the comment section. Like that's one of the key things I think with all of this. But yeah. Sure.
We also may do some we've done some little mini videos cooking at her place, and I may start doing more stuff like that. Cool. There was one meal I made the other day that I wasn't satisfied. I didn't post it. I think I sent it to some friends, but I wasn't happy with how it came out, so I didn't want to show it off. But if like for example, risotto, I had to sort of get into the hang of it again because I haven't made risotto in a while. But once I did it a few times, like it came back to me. So I'm thinking like, when I get more comfortable, we can start planning out some things, and I want to do videos, but I want to make sure I'm proud to show it off. Like, I don't want to botch something and put it up because, especially, I was saying, like, with all of my chef friends following me, I feel kind of embarrassed. So, no, okay. I mean, but also because I know it's not my best work. Like, I cooked salmon, the skin was a little off. Like, I pressed it too hard, so it was uneven. Things like that. It's like, I know it's not my best work, and it's like, I don't want to show that off if I'm not satisfied.
Yeah. So I think we'll definitely be doing more of that. You can check us out wherever you're finding this. There'll be links. Also, chefnitup.carbon33.com. I already have some of the foods that I've been actually making up there. So yeah, most definitely. I think we'll start now branching more into posting actual things that we're actually cooking ourselves. I already have like this is also an different. Anyway, it's links somewhere below. You can find the stuff. Anything else to say?
No. Enjoyed it too. Enjoyed the presentation. Okay. Hopefully everyone else did too.
So thanks again, Stephen. As per usual, this has been Silas and Stephen, guys, gals, and everybody else in between. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye. Enjoy your Easter.